Background checks and background screenings are a huge market for private investigators to get into this day and age. In fact, most PIs are going to get calls and inquiries about backgrounds on a regular basis. While this can be a very lucrative business line to add to your PI business portfolio, it could be a very dangerous product to offer as well. How could it possibly be dangerous to offer background checks, you ask? Great question. Let's discuss that a little bit. There are multiple types of background checks that you can be hired to conduct as a private investigator. Employment backgrounds are one of those more common types of backgrounds as well. Tenant backgrounds are in high demand. Now, these two types of backgrounds are the ones that can make you the most money. They are also the ones that can cause you the most grief, to be sure. Today's laws surrounding what can and cannot be reported on background checks that affect somebody financially in just about any way fall under the Fair Credit Reporting Act limitations. In this video, I am not going to go into detail about all of the requirements of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA. I'm going to go into some detail, however, on the top 5 mistakes that are made in background checks that cost businesses millions of dollars every year. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Here we go, folks. The top 5 mistakes made on background checks that cost businesses millions of dollars every year. Grab a pencil and a paper. We are going to go through this rather quickly, but feel free to pause and back up the video and rewatch parts if you need to. Social media research is on our list of the top 5 mistakes made on background checks for employment. Now, before you get upset, there is nothing wrong with having a background include a social media check. However, the biggest mistake that many employers make is making and conducting these types of research themselves. It is so easy for them to be going through the pile of resumes, checking all of the applications, reading all of the qualifications, then jumping on the internet and going to all of the social media platforms and searching for themselves to find the applicant to try to get to know them a little bit better. You need to highly discourage this behavior by your clients, folks. The primary issue is that social media contains tons and tons of information about people that is irrelevant to whether they should or should not get the job. For instance, the client may find out things about sexual orientation of the applicant or what political party they're affiliated with, and even family status. These things, folks, are all things that should not be considered for employment backgrounds and can cause a lot of headaches to the tunes of millions of dollars for the client and you if they, the client, use this information in making a hiring decision. Not only should you discourage your client from conducting this type of information digging and gathering, as you are doing your background check and your due diligence, you need to ensure that you do not report back these findings to your client. Only report the facts that are allowable for consideration. Our next mistake that costs businesses millions of dollars regarding background checks is looking at or requiring the applicant to provide irrelevant data. Now, what is irrelevant, you ask? Great question again. If you're doing a background for a software engineer position, then the applicant's driving records are probably irrelevant to that job. Now, some may argue that somewhere down the road, the applicant may be considered for a manager's position where that may become relevant. However, that determination of eligibility would have to be made at that time, not now. You should only be looking at data and information and records that are relevant to the position or applied for today. Okay, here we are already at background check mistake number 3 out of 5 that cost businesses millions of dollars every year. When I get done with this list of the top 5 background mistakes that cost businesses millions of dollars every year, I will have a bonus tip for you. Coming in at number 3 on our list is failure to get permission or authorization to conduct the background from the applicant. This may seem to be a no-brainer, folks, but you would be surprised how many times an employer sends off the pertinent data to start the background process prior to obtaining permission to conducting the background screening. Now, the way I protect my clients from this huge mistake is by providing them with a pre-employment background authorization form to have the applicant fill out and requiring that they provide me with a copy of that form when they request the background, and having a step-by-step process in place for my company, which includes a checklist of required documents and information to have prior to us conducting the background. Okay, background mistake number 4, folks, is not allowing the applicant to rebut or correct mistakes in their background checks. According to FCRA requirements, the employer must notify the applicant regarding results of their background screening. If there are mistakes in that report, the applicant should be able to have the opportunity to correct those mistakes. Now let me tell you a little story about a background check that I did for an organization a while back. In the background check, we ran that person by first and last name and date of birth. The person's name, both first and last, were not very common names either. So you would normally assume that anything that comes up is their information. Well, during our background screening process, we came up with several minor criminal court records. These were things like speeding and other traffic-related offenses. Nothing that could be considered on the application. There were, however, 2 arrests that were not disclosed by the applicant and 1 felony conviction. Now, in a knee-jerk reaction, an employer might just immediately disqualify that applicant. We, however, did not think it matched the general profile of the applicant, so we decided to dig a little deeper. After interviewing the applicant himself, we discovered that he runs into this problem a lot and that those records were indeed not related to him, rather another individual. We then obtained further court records that indeed showed that these arrests and the felony conviction were another individual with the exact, not so common first and last name, as well the exact date of birth, allowing the applicant to see the background information and, even more importantly, allowing him to rebut, disprove, and correct the inaccurate information is vital. Had the employer been given this information and they decided not to hire this individual based on that information, it could have cost them millions of dollars in a court of law. Okay, here we are at number 5, folks, of our top 5 background mistakes that employers make that cost businesses millions of dollars. But don't fret. Hang on. The big bonus tip is right after this. Number 5 is no consistency in a company's background screening policies and procedures. I've seen this a lot in the past where each round of hiring has a different process. Each manager does things just a little different, and policies and procedures get tweaked over time. This is a disaster waiting to happen, folks. Consistency is key to ensure people are not discriminated against or treated differently. I also require each of my clients that we do backgrounds for provide me with their screening policies. I then review them and I see if anything needs to be adjusted to ensure that FCRA and other matters are up to snuff. Any changes that I make, I require them to seek approval of their legal counsel to ensure that all the legal matters are met as well. Now, our bonus tip to help you ensure your clients do not make these top 5 background mistakes, and more importantly, to help you cover your own 6 while doing employment backgrounds. I require all documents to be provided to me at every background requested, and I have a checklist of all the information and documents required. This list includes the background authorization and permission form the applicant provided and a review from us to ensure it is the same form that we provided and that it is signed and dated by the applicant. Any deviation or changes to the form, and it goes back to the client for corrective action. This list also includes the job posting and requirements that the employer used to announce the job opening and the applicant's application and resume. And yes, even if they provide a resume, your client should require an actual. This list also includes the background check and screening policy of the company. Yes, we already have a copy of it, and we may have even helped the client write it, but we require a copy with each application. So in the event the client did not follow policy and gets sued, we have that extra layer of protection. We can simply say, wait, they told us these things occurred. We were following proper procedures based on the information that was provided.